Hello, hello. This is Tammy Brunk, Earth Sky Woman, beaming to you with an oracle for this Capricorn new moon that's going to be alive and active in about an hour from when I'm speaking. So I'm actually speaking from the energy of the new moon in essence. And it is the 30th of December. So it's opening the portal, opening the gateways into this month of January and into this completion of one Gregorian calendar year and an opening into a new year. So glad to be with you. How are you doing? What a year, what a ride this has been. I'm going to just go ahead and begin with the new moon because that'll just give us a jumping off point for the rest of the year. All right, so here we have, I am here back in Missouri after my travels to Mexico, which I will speak into a little bit. Um, and here we have this beautiful new moon in Capricorn. So where I'm at, it's actually happening right not long before the sun is actually setting in the west. And so the new moon in Capricorn, of course, as always, is this monthly experience where the sun and the moon come together in the same sign. So, of course, we had the new moon in Capricorn the sun moved into the sign of Capricorn with the solstice on the 21st of December. And now it's moved already to where it's almost 10 degrees of Capricorn. And then the moon meets it. So every month we have a new moon in Capricorn. And this can be seen as a seed point where we can set intentions, where we can really deepen into what it is that we are wanting to bring alive and set in motion for the coming month. And in the sign of Capricorn, let's explore what Capricorn is about. And many of you know already that I am bringing alive and have been for a while this emergent astrology paradigm that is rooted in the shamanic astrology paradigm. And it's my own kind of takeoff from that. And a big emphasis there is the understanding that every astrological sign has kind of a timeless essence, a core essence to it. And then they're also, I always think of it as this kind of primordial or beyond the human organic essence of every astrological sign as well. So when I think of the sign of Capricorn, first of all, I always think of an enormous oak tree. And I think about an enormous, or it kind of depends. It's almost like there's an archetypal tree, this world tree or tree of life that can be understood as perhaps the most ancient living symbol that lies at the heart of every root spiritual tradition. And the world tree, the tree of life, of course, is a very important symbol in the Abrahamic traditions, as well as any other, including, for example, the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquois Confederacy. Um, Peoples have their own version of this tree of peace, and all across the globe we'll see this. But part of the reason that this world tree it can be seen as many things, but it can be seen as encompassing all of the creation. It's a living symbol that encompasses all of the living organic creation. And it can also be seen as connecting to the ages that we live in. And I say this because there was a time period where I was dreaming, I had an incredible dream. It at a moment that felt a bit like, I suspect that moment felt to me a lot like this moment feels to many people today. It was when we had just invaded Iraq. This was in 2003. There was a lot that was happening in the world that, from my frame, I was very concerned about in terms of our well being and our health of our planet Earth and her indigenous peoples and the feminine. Everything to me seemed like it was on the chopping block, in essence. And we were about to go to war again, this very devastating war. And here we are again today in the situation where we are seeing the ravages of war playing out on the world stage in a way that we just have to shake our heads. How can it be that we as a human species are continuing this, right? So at this moment where I was very concerned about the polycrises at that time, and today feels like another octave of that, I had a dream. And in this dream, I saw an enormous tree, just vast, colossal tree that had fallen. And when the tree fell, it had unearthed, when a tree will fall, sometimes there's this massive root wad that was just all this fresh, this will happen sometimes. You'll see all this fresh new soil that was all around the roots of this massive great tree. And I remember this feeling. It was just this awe and wonder, number one, at the massive girth of this tree. And then that feeling, there was a feeling of regeneration, of new life, of this, yes, it was a terrible thing that it fell, but yes, also there was this massive new energy and resource that was there. And also, interestingly, I had this at the time. I had a little Geo Metro, a little red car. My dad used to call it a throwaway car because he didn't believe in anything that wasn't a Toyota. That was my late dad. Anyway, it was a really little, it was a very small car, but the car was on top of the root wad. And I recall in my dream just thinking, that's nothing. That little car is just like this little tinker toy. I could just lift it up with my own hands. And in any case, when I woke from that dream, I had this, and in the dreaming work that I do, it's always what's the first feeling when you wake up? That's essential. And I had this feeling of hopefulness for the first time after many, many dark days, of being really immersed in this deeper kind of anguish around what we as a species were doing to our planet Earth. And and so I woke up with this feeling of kind of wonderment and possibility and this deep rooted uh, um, recognition in my body, because dreams come from our bodies in a sense. This deep rooted recognition um, of the the way that built into all of these changes and even tragedy and darkness was this emergent new beginning. And it really carried me. That dream carried me through a very dark time. So I bring this up right now because even later, I had met other people who had had similar dreams. Sometimes it was of a great tree burning, sometimes it was of the tree falling down. But other astrologers, I remember Eric Roth, Gary Caton, we'd all, and others, another dreaming friend, Chirona Unity, had had a dream that I helped her work with a massive tree on fire. So we kept having these themes of this tree, what it is that feels so substantial and real, um, meaning having to do with an age that had fallen. And then there was this, in the case of Gary Caton, he also saw the root wad. Now, how this is so fascinating, the reason this relates to now is for two reasons. One is because, again, Capricorn is the sign that has been in the deepest process of composting. The sign of Capricorn is one that at this turning of the ages that we're living into right now, it is a sign that really, because Capricorn carries the culture, it carries the frequencies of our current modern paradigm and even the roots of this time of separation or patriarchy, however you want to say it. And the Abrahamic religions, of course, are at that root. So this great tree of life of our current age is, in a sense, you could say that it's fallen, and that this, and so Capricorn is the sign that carries the codes or the operating manual or the rules or the guidelines for a given societal norms or age or cultural worldview cosmology. And all of that is up, all of that is shifting and changing right now. It's in under a massive revisioning. And of course, since Pluto was in Capricorn in 2008, and then it was just forayed into Aquarius for the final time. So it's no longer in Capricorn. We really have been in this Capricorn crucible from 2008 until this last this fall. And so this world, this larger societal paradigm that we've been in the midst of, we are moving into uncharted territories. So this age has effectively shifted into a new age, is the way I see it. And so, Capricorn, as this deeply rooted tree, what I would suspect, what I've seen, and actually transmitted this in a dreaming class I did years ago, was that um, part of what had happened is that we as a human species, because we had moved to a lower frequency, we no longer could even perceive of this great, beautiful, sacred, massive tree of life or world tree. We could no longer perceive of the living template of creation. And because of this, it was that forgetfulness that was kind of resonating with us in the ways that we could operate as amnesiacs, as a species that didn't know how to take care of our own earth, of our mother earth or each other. So in this vision, what I've been shown was that we were starting to see that the tree had been there the whole time. We were remembering it back into being, right? So that's another way to understand the tree of life, the world tree. It's coming back into reality because we're remembering it. We're attuning ourselves more deeply to the ultimate, the absolute reality, the world behind this world that we'd forgotten. Um, so those are a couple of different ways to look at this, the way that the creation as we know it, human society, as well as we know it, and our cosmology, our frame, has been radically shifting and changing. And so the sign of Capricorn has been undergoing that massive death, rebirth, resurrection. Okay. So here we are with the first new moon in Capricorn since we've been doing all this composting, all this healing of the Capricorn paradigm. And so, what does this mean practically? What does this mean in our lives? Well, first of all, just we can see the way that the Abrahamic religions and the ways that they have been operating, that the old drama around that, it is playing out. It's continuing to come into its final phases, is just historically that when we look at all the prophecies, when we look at all of it, this is of necessity what is happening. But when we look at in our personal lives, how does the distorted Capricorn or how does the maybe unskillful Capricorn play out? The outdated Capricorn, we can say, well, it has to do with the ways that we personally and collectively, there's a couple layers. One is the way we give our authority and our capacity to govern. We outsource it. We outsource our authority. We outsource our capacity to structure, organize, and govern ourselves to someone outside of ourselves. And even as I say that, of course, we need to have some institutions and systems to hold us. That's very natural. But there's an extreme to which we do that or have done that because we forgot how powerful we actually are. And we forgot that the infrastructure, the spiritual technology, that to lives inside of each one of us as a human, each one of us as a human sovereign being has a unique template where we can be this beautiful, radiant, whole, completely resourced being, sovereign, who has that God spark inside of us. We can fully activate that. We can fully learn to govern ourselves internally. We can learn to manage our own internal resources. And this can have to do with how we care for our bodies. This can have to do with how we manage our time, how we manage our money, how we manage the land around us. We can learn to do this we can learn to be self-responsible and to cultivate self-governance and self-authority. And so it starts with zone one from a permaculture term. Zone one is our own life and our own body. That is where we need to first learn to govern. So the questions at this Capricorn new moon can be something like, what is it and this new Capricorn energy that's emerging? How is it that I am wishing to govern my body, my life, my zone one, me, my reality? How is it that I can more deeply claim my own inner authority and I can govern myself more effectively with greater mastery? How can that happen? How can I do that? That's one of the big questions for Capricorn. And so speaking for myself, I'll say one of the ways I'm doing this, because my sense is it's something that needs to happen that's organic. It actually begins more with rooting into the consciousness of the body and doing nonlinear, more right brain practices that help us to break out of the old patterning of how things are done. So for example, what I'm doing is I am taking a course with Keone. He is a Hawaiian lineage holder whose ancestry goes back about 20,000 years to Mu, which he refers to as Mu, which also can be understood as Lemuria, which he would say actually still exists. It was seen as this golden age, this golden era of deep connection to the earth and harmony and peacefulness. And he would say that it still exists, but we as a human species have kind of dropped in our resonance. We're not operating from love. And so we're needing to raise our frequency so that we can operate once again and be connected into these ancient ways of being. So Ulu is a spiritual technology that he's been sharing that consists of that is based on a way of waking up the spinal cord and waking up through chant and through certain bodily movements and certain meditative practices. Our own the elixir that lives inside of our spine, our pineal, and our pituitary, and activating this spiritual technology to completely wake up. And it's resonant with Kundalini yoga and some other systems, but it's a beautiful practice. So I've been doing that. And that's something I'm committed to because to me, it feels like that's rooting into a very Capricornian, organic, awakening the original organic template and structure and um, operating manual of myself as a human, as an individual human. So that's how I'm devoting myself to waking up this new expression of Capricorn of how do I govern myself? And again, it's not outside in, it's inside out. So how do I go deeply into this body of mine and into the medicine of the bones in the body? I can't think of anything more Capricornian. Capricorn, and what Keone would say is that when we honor the linear and when we honor the material, I should say, when we honor the physical material realm, 3D, I would say, however you want to say it, it's not until we fully honor that and we are willing to be fully present in that that we can cultivate greater mastery of that we can then move into more of the quantum. So that's my commitment. I'll share a link to that course. I believe it's still open. You're going to have to catch up because it's been going on for a couple months, but I believe it's still open. So if I can, I believe I can share that link. But my question for you is, what are the practices you're using to tune into your organic infrastructure, care for your body, care for your spine, care for your bones, care for your teeth? I just had my teeth worked on when I was in Mexico, right? So Capricorn does have to do with those foundational structures. And again, my sense is that the ancient wisdom of Mother Earth lives in our DNA, lives in our bones. And so it's a really wonderful time to tap into that wisdom and to work with indigenous, when there are indigenous wisdom keepers and lineage holders that are willing to share the wisdom they have, to seek out those resources because they can help us root into the Capricorn mysteries, meaning the original templates or the original operating systems for humanity that are in harmony with Earth systems, right? So that's part of it. I also feel deeply that it's actually important to honor the last 5,000 years of this age of, you could say, patriarchy. It's important to honor the Abrahamic religions, to honor Christianity. From my sense, that's the religion I was born in. And so I've been really doing a lot of work to deeply honor that path, as well as, for me, it's actually always been easier to honor Islam or people who practice that faith, or that's the easiest thing for me because I tend to, because I feel, I guess, that's just my inner Lilith, or that's my inner Eris, the part of me that more easily resonates with or feels an affinity for groups that have been marginalized. I've always kind of had more of a resonance with that. So for me, a lot of the growth edge has been to see the beauty in my own lineage and ancestry and to claim that as well, to really honor it. So that consists, for example, of going home for Christmas and spending Christmas with my mom and almost 60 relatives, most of whom are evangelical Christians, very different from me, but we have done a lot of work, all of us, to deeply honor each other in our own paths, and certainly not all. Actually, I would just say in the last year that some of the deepest work I've done is to heal that rift with my own mom and with these family members. To me, it feels important so that I can, for example, talk to them about what's going on in Gaza, or I can share with them my own experience of the feminine divine, or the way that my sense is that astrology was deeply rooted into the early Christian traditions and that there's good evidence for that. So that's part of what I've been doing, as well as, my mom, she'll write down Psalms and Proverbs. She writes one down every morning now, and I love that. I think that's the most beautiful thing. she's been in a deep devotional practice in her mornings as she's 84 years old. She's lived a very full life, and she would be happy to go home to her creator tomorrow. So she's preparing herself through that kind of devotional practice. So I think that's beautiful. So, I feel like if you're Jewish, there's often a lot of heartache, that comes with being a person who's aware of the ways that our religions have been weaponized. And we can do a lot of work around that, and it's essential, in this moment. And at the same time, again, I feel as we come to the closing chapter of a period of time where these religions the have been the operating manual. And these stories, origin stories, are the ones that we've really lived by, that have been imprinted in our consciousness and we've been programmed into. That it's a really beautiful time to ask what is sacred and beautiful and true. And like that great tree, each one of us, my great tree is a Christian tree, right? And then deeper than that, it's Yggdrasil, in the Germanic or the Northern European traditions. Well, I'm good for the moment because we're coming out of this 5,000 year period I'm looking at the root of modern society. I honor what are the beautiful elements of Christianity, and who were the Essenes. I want to look really deep at the original root. How was that tradition informed by some of my other European ancestors? It's just to dig in that. And some of the resources I've found useful for that are The Way of the Rose, a book by Perdita Finn and Clark Strand. Um, there's a lot of others. The work of Neil Donald, oh gosh, what is his name? Prayers of the Cosmos. I can't remember his exact name right now, but it's Aramaic Teachings of Jesus. So it's almost like a Tao Te Ching with some of the really beautiful phrases from the Bible, instead of being translated from Hebrew to Greek, translated directly from Aramaic, which is more of a Middle Eastern dialect that is much more poetic and nuanced, and really kind of a bit more right brain and mystical from my view. And so it resonates more with the part of me that really does feel I probably had many lifetimes in more of the Middle Eastern cultures and sensibilities. And I'm talking about pre-fundamentalism and colonization, and prior to the kind of rigidity or hardening of some of those traditions into more black and white thinking, right? More survival oriented thinking. The deeper root of Islam is very mystical, as is Judaism, as is Christianity. So rooting deeply into our ancestral wisdom, religion, spirituality, earth ways. A lot of us have been doing that. This is a beautiful month to do more of that, connecting in with the ancestors. I think all of winter is an incredible time to do that, starting with Samhain and all the way through, even through Imbolc, even through the cross quarter in early February, where we connect to Bridget for those of us who have Western or have European indigenous ancestry. Um, so Capricorn has to do with this deeper connection and healing of the ancestral roots, healing of the cultural miasms or distortions that live inside of us, the programming, and coming back into again inner self governance, and learning to be in a right relationship with time. And let's be honest, time has been moving very interestingly, right? So Capricorn wants to be in right relationship with sacred timing. And so a lot of us are, it feels like a bit of a puzzle sometimes. Like the time seems to be moving differently. And sometimes we're not quite sure how it is that we organize our time in an effective way that honors organic time or Kairos time. But that's part of the inquiry, right? We'll just say that this month, that's part of the inquiry. And I'll say for myself, as much as I resist it, that my desire is to calendar more in advance. Now, will I do that? We'll see. It is my biggest challenge. And because I've had to push against it so much, I have to ask myself, is that appropriate for me? But that's my desire. So a question for each of us might be, what is right? First of all, I would say, be curious. How is time moving differently for me now? And yeah, let me say it like this. What is organic time? how does time move differently for me now? And how can I work constructively with time so that it serves my larger purposes and helps me to be someone who can materialize things in 3D reality. So one of the things County would say that I found useful, even though it's the thing my inner feminine rebels against massively, is that the masculine operates very well with the linear and with repetition. And so that's part of the Ulu practice for me is repetition. And so that then when the masculine can see that my inner masculine can see that I'm willing to operate with repetition and linearity, then there's a sense of trustworthiness. And so that the masculine can work with me more constructively. So, yeah, Capricorn, but often what happens for many of us is that we're not rooted enough into our own feminine, into our body, into the present moment with a feeling of safety. And so until we do that, then it is very challenging for our whole system to be online sufficiently to then move into the more masculine zone of productivity or making things happen in the world. So for many of us, we may feel like we've been in this more feminine zone forever, but sometimes it takes a very long time for us to root more deeply into our bodies, into the present moment, into a feeling of safety so that we can allow to emerge organically this more active, externally facing materialization and making our outer goals really happen from a different locus of a different state. So that's the exploration and the adventure that many of us are engaged in right now. Okay, so all right, the Capricorn New Moon, what else to say about it? It is close to a stargate, which we're going to come to when the sun moves in, is conjunct Nunki. Nunki is, let's see, it's going to be in about one, two, is about 12 degrees of Capricorn. So it's going to be in about 3 days. So that'll be, I think the 2nd of January is when the sun will be aligned with Nunki, which is the star in the vein of the archer's arrow. It's a very important star because this star has to do with all that potent energy that we are pulling back right now. That we, in this time of year, in the dark of winter, where we're like kind of reflecting, we're resting, we're bringing all this energy back, and then we are going to release it when the sun opens to that stellar stargate. So on the 2nd of January, and I'm going to talk more about everything else going on that day because there's a lot. But by the 2nd of January, okay, so here's the other aspect of this great tree, the world tree, the tree of life, is that the what I've learned recently in the work that I've done with Zoe Christina Solaris, who comes from an Essene lineage, the earlier Christians, the root Christians, is that the tree of life, the Sephiroth, or the world tree, that the root wad has a connection to the center of the galaxy. Now, I always knew galactic center had a connection to the world tree, but never before had I heard that it was connected to the root wad. So then when I thought about my dream, it's like, wow, okay, that connects. So many of you will know already that one of the reasons we say that we live at the turning of an age, shifting from one age to another, one of the indicators of that among so many is that we have our Earth aligned with the galactic equator right now. So that at the winter solstice, for example, you'll see that the sun is aligned to the center of the galaxy, that when you see the Milky Way, it's that really thick bulge, that the sun is aligned with that. And then the sun at the summer solstice is aligned with the edge of the galaxy. So the Earth is aligned with the plane of the galaxy right now. And that only happens every 13,000 years. And according to many prophecies, this 13,000 year mark is very, very significant. So this is when we have a massive turning of an age. So right now, winter solstice or near the winter solstice, the sun is aligned to the galactic center. And now Nunki with the star in the archer's hand is aimed, that arrow is aimed towards the center of the galaxy. So one of the ways you can see galactic center is that it can be seen as it's this kind of paradox. The Mayans would have actually seen the dark rift. It's a region in the galactic center as a birth canal. To many Plains Native Americans in the US and North America, Turtle Island, the Milky Way galaxy would have been seen as a highway that the souls would travel and that they would emerge from somewhere in the middle of the sacred hoop, which is where the summer solstice sun, it's a ring of stars that the summer solstice sun is located at the center of. And that's the edge of the galaxy, right? If you see that arching Milky Way, the thinner end of that arching Milky Way is galactic edge. So the spirit, when we're born, would be birthed in that part of the sky and then travel over the lifetime till it dies, and then it would exit through galactic center. So galactic center can be seen as a birth portal, but it can also be seen as a place where the souls return when we die. So that makes sense, right? It's a cauldron of like beginnings and endings. I was always trained that at the winter solstice and around that time, we can constructively set the intention when we see the morning or evening, the morning, sunrise or sunset, that we can set a clear intention to release into galactic center via the sun, whatever it is we want to release and let go of. That's one way to work ceremonially with the solstice. Nonki is another point where we can work with that releasing into the great void, into the center of the galaxy, into the womb, you could say also, of the galaxy. So in a couple of days, January 2nd, if you've got more that you've been working with, maybe more's come up over the holidays. I know that's true for many of us. We've got plenty of family stuff that brings up themes, but if as you've been reflecting on 2024, there are some things you want to release, well, January 2nd is a beautiful day to work with the crescent moon. Let's see, the crescent moon, or I'm sorry, the sun, knowing that the sun, when you work with the sun, you'll know that the sun is with Nunki, and that's also a release point into galactic center. Okay, so that's another way to work with that. Okay, so what else about this? The other thing about this new moon that I think is really powerful and interesting is that yesterday, Chiron stationed direct. So anytime a planet stations, it's going to be really close to the Earth, and we're going to feel it. I've said this many times. When a planet stations, it's like a still point where we get to really breathe in and move with and connect into the true essence of that planet. So for me, this is big because I've really been in a massive Chiron transit. I mean, it started when I was 48. Sooner than most people go through their Chiron return when they're 50. I started mine at 48. And then for a series of, it's been continuing to very powerfully activate my chart since that time. And I'm coming to the final phase of that when it's been on my ascendant. So it's very close to that right now. But so Sunday, if you felt as I did, this kind of resurgence of the Chiron and Aries themes of like identity crisis, like who am I now? And what's my contribution? And where do I belong? Like these foundational questions of, do I have a right to exist? And am I actually doing anything useful here? There's this sense of like kind of a wound where that like Aries has the energy of, I'm here, like a 2-year-old, I'm here. I'm going to do what I came to do. I'm all in. I'm all for it. This passionate dive into life. And when Chiron's there, well, we still have the capacity to access that. But there's also, we might sometimes bump up against a part of us that is really afraid that doesn't feel like we have a right to exist. I'll just say that's the deepest level of that Chiron wound, identity crisis. It's a kind of a floundering internally sometimes around, do I belong here? And so I was really navigating that yesterday, and I've gotten to a point where it's such a familiar feeling that I was able to name it. For one thing, knowing Chiron was activating that was very helpful. But if some of you have been feeling that, just know it's a phase. And many of us who were born with Chiron and Aries, and that was from, if you were born, I think from like 1970 until oh, I don't have the exact dates in front of me, but if you have Chiron and Aries, you're going to understand and know this energy around what it's like to question your right to be, your right to exist. And so the gift, because Chiron always carries a gift, is that as we really learn to master and meet that with compassion, self-compassion, we we have a capacity actually to release this need of clinging to the self, so we can learn how to actually move with life without being deeply attached to this is me, this is my identity. That can be one of the deep gifts of Chiron and Aries. And also, we paradoxically, we can also begin to acknowledge that foundationally, we don't have to do anything to prove that. We're here, and who we are is love. Like who we are is absolutely perfect, just as we came here. And so, it really the gift is to reclaim that kind of 2-year-old, like joyful exuberance at getting to be in a body, getting to be alive, getting to have this adventure. So and I move in and out of those states, right? I do return to that recognition. And I was able to do that in a 24-hour period, which was great. So, but just know if you've been feeling it, this is also a feature of this new moon. And later in the month, we're going to have the sun squaring Chiron. And when a planet stations like that, you're going to feel it for a couple weeks on either side sometimes when it's a slow moving planetary body. So between the sun squaring Chiron and that activation, if you're feeling kind of raw or tender, or some of the rawness of the holidays and family stuff, whatever it is, be really tender, really gentle with yourself, and just know this can shift. And really take to heart the that you have within you the capacity to deeply drop into just this joyful, natural, organic, innate knowing that you're here, that is a gift to be alive right now, and that you belong here, and that the world is so loves you so much and is a friendly place, and you have a right to be here, and you have beautiful gifts to share, and you already share them. And it's a sense of homecoming and belongingness that you feel at a deep level. That's what's available for us right now. Okay, so yeah, so that's another feature of this new moon. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. I'm going to complete with that. I think that's good. And then um, just go to the larger month, what's going on this month. And so, okay. So let's see. What else is what's the big energy this month? All right. So one of the biggest undercurrents that I'm sure plenty have talked about, but I haven't talked about nearly as much as I want to, is that we have had Mars in a square with excuse me, I want to make sure. Okay, good. We've had Mars in a square with or opposition to Pluto ever since really the beginning of October. We've been feeling it, and it's going to be over a 6-month period. It's going to go through even middle of May next year. So this is a very significant opposition. And if you think about it, Mars and Pluto are two of the planetary bodies that get some of the worst press, right? But there's without a question, they both have this raw power that they give us access to. And so this has been a big undercurrent. If we look at the pre-election time, we look at the elections, post-election energetics. I think I spoke to this last time as well, but what I've come to recognize is that we are living in a moment where the election itself was something that certainly I understand could have very negative consequences. And at the same time, my sense is what it did was it affected change on a level where a lot of free energy was made available because there was a change, there was a shift, and that was needed. Again, I'm not saying that was my vote. Not that's personal, and I'm not going to judge anyone for whom it was. But I will say that there was this primal energy that was made available to us because of that change. And so we get to use that. We get to use that and learn to access this alive energy within our systems so that we can resource ourselves deeply to be change agents and to really claim our personal power and our collective power to affect change. Now, clearly with this, so this is one of the features of the movement of Pluto to Capricorn and Capricorn to Pluto and Aquarius, is that this is how this 20-year cycle, Pluto and Aquarius, is being initiated, is opposite Mars. So it's suggesting to us that there's a tremendous amount of tension in our collective field, in our human species. There's a lot of, in our modern world, there's an incredible power struggle going on right now. And so that needs to be navigated inside our system. So I've seen it play out through a lot of what I've seen and felt inside myself and with others is the energy of competition. And it's interesting. Keone talks about this too. His sense is that this is the thing of patriarchy that's left behind that we need to completely heal and release. And I agree somewhat, but I agree somewhat. And at the same time, what I'm also noticing is that for many of us, so for example, if you're a woman who was raised to be traditional Christian or any other kind of more traditional female, um, probably it wasn't okay for you to express passion or even like, I would say healthy competition, like playing a game and like, trying to get better at it, but playful competition. That can be a healthy expression, I think, of Mars or of Aries. Um, and but men kind of can know how to do that, I feel. There's a difference between toxic competition, in my perspective, and a kind of healthy, playful, let's help each other get better at whatever it is we're working on. And I've been playing with that more too. So I've been seeing that show up a lot. And without a doubt, there's also a kind of a toxic power struggle that can happen inside of ourselves when we compare ourselves to others, or it can happen between us and people we love when we feel insecure. And in our insecurity, we lash out because we don't know who we are. We don't know if we belong. Um, I noticed that in myself that when I'm coming from that insecurity, I'm incapable of harmonizing or working cooperatively with others. So, on that level, I do think something really primal is being worked out with this Pluto Uranus opposition at a personal and a collective level. And clearly, as well, when we see what happened recently with this shooter of the CEO of the health insurance company, um, I have a lot of people in my life who live in the spectrum. I mean, of every political perspective and belief system. And I have people over here who are really excited about it. And that may trouble you. But when I say excited, I mean excited that it feels like people are finally being able to voice the agonizing, anguishing impact of and the in our faces. If you are a person of color, if you are a poor person, a person that is working class or in poverty in this country, then you will have lived in an experience that's very different from people who have privilege. You will have been seeing people you love often, or friends, or many people in your community lose their lives or live a life in extreme pain because our medical system is broken. And so the how disgusting that is really is something that's been in people's faces. It's been breaking their hearts. It's been causing them to feel that they're alone in the sense of vast injustice that's baked into our economic and our medical system, for profit system. And so there are a lot of people who are feeling that energy rising up and saying, fine, finally, people are seeing this. They're seeing the anguish that my community and the people I love have been seeing, that they've been, cocooned or bubbled away from, that they haven't seen. And then they have other people in my life who are just wonderful, kind, loving people, and yet they cannot, there's no way that they can ever see a death as being a good thing, and they're kind of horrified to see this kind of rage or sense of justice that's been unleashed. So, you know, I'm I'm somewhere in the middle, as usual, where I've been practicing seeing and feeling my own discomfort with it, and really dropping into listening to the stories and kind of softening my heart, um, and also seeing the places where I'm also afraid myself to feel or express the rage I also feel sometimes when I see how unjust the system is. Because I think the truth is that many people have been terrified to try to break out of the programming and of the system because rightly so, they're afraid that they could be harmed. Um, and I think more than anything else, the economic system we live within is built such that people are trapped within it. And it's very hard for them to, people who are working class or below in terms of economic reality. And these are, let's be honest, these are the people who are maintaining our systems that often they don't have enough extra energy or resource beyond feeding their families or themselves to to effectively do much else. And so this is problematic. And so we're seeing that energy that has been suppressed and that has been buried for so many people who are locked in this economic system. We're seeing this energy get released where people are saying enough. And this feeling is felt across the board. And there's a joyous and an exuberant energy as well that's being released where people are saying, okay, I'm done with this. This is not working for me. And so people are finding ways to break free from that system. And we're needing to do it collectively and we're needing to find ways to create new systems. So, but there is a natural healthy anger and a feeling of enough, no more wars, no more extractive medical system for profit. And I think the cry from the core of our being in this moment is we reverence life. Every child's life. We reverence the life of this planet Earth. We reverence the life of the animals, of the ecosystems, of the rivers. And no more can we allow this ravaging and extracting, um, the senseless elements of this system that are extracting for no purpose. So we're done with that. So this is a big theme that's also emerging with that Pluto um, Pluto Mars opposition. All right. So that's a big theme that is really alive right now because the 2nd of January is when that is the second of the three oppositions. First one was November 3rd, second one is January 2nd, and the third will be April 27th. So that whole window of time, we've got this tension that we're working through. So we need to work it internally, come into balance with these power struggles inside, and learn how to work with that energy in a masterful way, a skillful way inside, and then learn to do that in our personal relationships, learn how to use creative tension constructively and creatively, and then learn to do that collectively in groups, and then learn to do that more as a species. So I think this is a learning edge that actually is really exciting, even if it's uncomfortable for those of us who are very conflict averse and really used to performing. Because that's a lot of what we're trained to do in our modern society, especially I think in the US, is to perform. So we're having to get more authentic, and this is part of what it's for. I speak for myself. I've been very uncomfortable to see the places where it's been very difficult for me to be authentic. So working on it. All right. So the other thing that's happening is Venus is moving into Pisces, also Thursday, January 2nd. And then the crescent moon is meeting evening star Venus on the 3rd of January. And so that is activating the brow chakra gate. So for a month, there's going to be this opening into our intuition and our inner seeing in the pineal gland. So right brain, visionary, it's waking up our inner visionary. And of course, Pisces also is a visionary. So, and it's really powerful because it's really a movement. It's already taking us into the forecasting of the new Venus and Pisces cycle, the first one in 150 years. That is beginning at the end of March this year. So we're going to start feeling into what that energy will be about and opening into our inner visionaries and intuitives and psychics, our oracular abilities. All right. And then there's so much going on. Then we have January 6th, retrograde Mars. Mars is retrograde until February 25th. So we're doing a lot of strategic planning right now. Mars is moving from Leo into Cancer on January 6th. And that's a big deal. And so we are, and then on the 15th, Mars is opposite the sun, beginning a new cycle a new Mars cycle in Cancer. And so the nurturing masculine is going to be doing his work over the next 2.5 years, which is very exciting. So the masculine himself is opening into his own mothering and nurturing capacities. All right. So then what else is big? January 21st, Sun is conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. So again, more of this Pluto and Aquarius energy that we have, and still while Mars and Pluto are opposite. And what else is big? And then we've got our new moon in Aquarius, Wednesday, January 29th. I'll do my best to get something out for that. And then finally, Thursday, January 30th, we've got Uranus stationing direct. So that meaning that Uranus has gone back as far as it's going to go in the sign of Taurus, and now it's going to move forward into the later degrees of Taurus. Okay, and that is all that I've got for you today. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of themes emerging here. I feel the desire to create more videos on some of these themes. Oh, one other thing I'm going to do a separate video on is a shifting of the nodes. We're shifting from North Node. The lunar nodes have been in Aries, Libra, Aries North Node, Libra South Node, and they're shifting to Pisces North Node and um, Virgo South Node on January 11th. So that's going to be a separate video. And so enjoy the month, enjoy the new moon, and sending you so much love post holidays, whatever your faith, whatever your tradition, and excited to in entering this new year. I hope you have a beautiful new year, and I will be offering probably more free courses on 2025 so look for that. Okay, so much love.